Welcome to Not So New News, where we discover what is hidden in newspapers from 100 years ago. Today's article comes from the town of Whitesburg and appeared in Letcher County's oldest newspaper, the Mountain Eagle. Volume 2, Number 20, dated January 14th, 1909. Today's edition of the Mountain Eagle is titled, Pay Up for the Eagle Now. Mr. Merchant, let the Eagle advertise your business. Rates reasonable. Mr. Merchant, let us do your job printing. We guarantee satisfaction. This is a reading that is from the writings done in 1909. These views are from that time period and do not necessarily reflect the modern views of Kentucky Tennessee living, nor its narrator. However, we do feel that all historical documents should be preserved for the future and strive not to change one word of the reading. However, if we feel that the readings are too controversial in political or religious standing, we will either silently put up the article for viewing or will direct everyone where it can be found online. Thank you for your understanding. The Story of Loyal by Inez Merrington Whitfield. Copyright by Ford Publishing Company. Although Loyal was not a small dog, his stubbornness was disproportionately large. Moreover, he had the advantage of most men, including his master, is always knowing his own mind. One October day, the air breathed into Loyal's soul a challenge for a stroll. And as the family was very uninteresting while unpacking after a summer spent in Europe, he unhesitatingly accepted the challenge and walked out of the open door. For several blocks, he walked behind a girl with yellow brown hair, whose gown, hat, gloves, and shoes were the same shade as his own coat. It may have been a sense of harmony of colors, or it may have been just a dog sense that led him to walk near the girl, finally pushing a cold nose into the hand hanging loosely at her side. He must have known that she would neither start nor cry out. She only looked down at him with a pleased surprise and closed her hand tightly over his nose. Quote, Good morning, you handsome dog. You seem to know your admirers at sight. I wonder who your master is. Unquote. The briskness of their pace soon brought them to Madison Avenue and the 42nd Street, where the girl in brown, after patting her companion on the head and addressing numerous flattering remarks to him, boarded a westbound car. Looking back, she saw the dog gazing reproachfully after her. All that day, Catherine Raymond found her mind wandering to the fine St. Bernard who had joined her early morning walk. She would have been astonished had she realized how often in the following days she thought of him, pondering his act, his name, and his home. 4 days passed, and Wednesday's outdoor beauty prevailed upon Catherine, who, dressed in brown as usual, went forth to enjoy a walk. The avenue was noisy, although apparently deserted, so she turned toward Madison and, rounding the corner, met Loyal, who nearly knocked her down by his joyful recognition. He soon grew calm, except for his tail, and marched proudly by her side, with frequent long upward looks into her face, which was turned toward him as often as might be. At the end of a mile, they turned, seemingly of one accord, and retraced their steps. The girl and the dog, so alike in color, attract the considerable attention of which both were wholly unconscious. At the steps of her home, Catherine discovered that she had a problem to solve, for her four-footed escort appeared astonished at her inhospitable hesitation, and strongly indicated a desire to enter, showing by many signs of his natural stubbornness, even lifting up his voice to emphasize it. Quote, Perhaps, unquote, whispered Catherine. Quote, You are a lost dog, unquote, and for the first time she thought of his collar. Bending, she read, quote, Loyal, 29 West Blank Street, unquote. The address given was so nearby that after some debate with her inclination, she decided to leave him outside and watch whether he went in the right direction. This he did, but not until an hour's patient waiting had satisfied his mind that his new friend was capable of disappointing him, that she was not coming forth again, nor was he expected to follow her inside. Scarcely a morning passed that, freeing himself from the company of his master and his family, he did not make an attempt, with only an occasional success, to visit Catherine. When he was not made welcome, he seemed to realize that there had to be some good reason for it, and went away cheerfully. Late one afternoon, on a cold, windy day, Catherine was returning home. Down the avenue came a frightened horse, madly plunging from side to side in a useless endeavor to escape the mass of vehicles. A tiny child broke from his nurse's hand and dodged his way to the middle of the street. Catherine rushed for the child, but a huge yellow dog plunged through the crowd of pedestrians and dashed into the side of the girl, pulling her from under the horse, and at the same instant that a muscular young man grasped the horse's head and was dragged off his feet before the bewildered animal was brought to a stand. After a few moments of excitement, order was restored, and it was found that the only damage done was that to the tawny-colored dress Catherine wore, a piece of which still clung to Loyal's teeth, and attracted the attention of the muscular young man who took it, while apologizing for his dog's conduct. Catherine's smile puzzled him, as did Loyal's behavior when she put her hand on his head and spoke affectionately to him. Some time later, the last person to board the Erie ferry boat was Catherine Raymond, and as the gangplank was removed, cries from many throats filled the air. For a beautiful St. Bernard had rushed to the edge and bounded over chains and rails and an expanse of foaming, seething water. A murmur of relief rose when he landed safe on the ferry deck, and a girl in golden brown pressed to the edge of the boat, and waving a brown hand seemed to signal to someone in the crowd on shore. To Stanley Wellingham, it was intolerable, the time that was consumed in loading the next ferry, and a year seemed to pass between the time of the starting and that of the landing on the Jersey side. For his mood counted time by changes of emotions and accumulation of sensations. Did the girl in brown, he now know that he had not succeeded in forgetting her for a single day since the runaway incident, mean for him to cross or wait at the pier for her? Never had he or his feelings been so confused, and he was at a complete loss to know what he should say to this girl who had such an attraction for Loyal, the dogs whose friendship had never been given to anyone outside of the Wellington household. What to say need not have troubled him in the least. Catherine and Loyal were waiting at the ferry house. Quote, I am sorry, unquote, she said at once, quote, that I have been the cause of this inconvenience to you, but I am glad, very glad, that nothing happened to Loyal. I was terribly frightened. Of course, no one could have thought such a thing, but perhaps it would be safer in such crowds to have a chain. Goodbye, Loyal, old fellow. Thank you, sir, for coming over. I must catch my train, unquote. That was all. She was gone, and he had not opened his lips. If he was confused before, he was now in a tumult of exasperation and anger at his own stupidity. And he heaped curses upon his own head for having been made a fool of by a big dog and a brown girl. He came near including Loyal in his dispensations of maledictions, but remembered the dog's fault was an excuse of affection for a girl in brown. He tried to console himself by recalling her rapid speech, her haste, and the size of the rushing crowd, but he could not force the fact to give him any credit. He attempted to forget it. The trial lasted a month. Then he gave up and, in a dissatisfied frame of mind, started for his vacation in the Pennsylvania mountains. Young Wellenkamp decided to leave Loyal with his father, but the dog scented the threatened separation and used his powers of persuasion. So when Stanley boarded the train, he was accompanied by Loyal, with a very jolly wag in his tail. At the water gap, a slight accident delayed the train, and Stanley took the occasion to exercise Loyal and stretch his own long legs by walking the streets near the railroad. The dog grew restless and uneasy and became deaf to his master's voice. As the whistle of the engine warned, "All aboard!" Loyal dashed madly away, on, until out of sight. Really concerned, fearing something had happened to the dog, Stanley hurried after him, losing considerable time by mistaking the corner which had been Loyal's vanishing point. At last he turned the right one and saw a picture, a vine-covered plaza of a semi-colonial house, a girl in a tan-colored dress, seated in a huge lounging chair, and a tawny-colored St. Bernard with his paws on the arm of the chair and his face very near the girl's, while his tail was animated by the most joyful emotions. Superlative wrath took possession of the astonished Wellenkamp, whose sharp whistle of recall startled Loyal and brought Catherine to her feet. Laying a hand on Loyal's collar, she called, quote, "Please come here a moment," unquote. As he appeared reluctant, she repeated, quote, "Please come," unquote. At the first sign of embarrassment on her part, his sudden angry determination melted. Explanations were exchanged, and Wellenkamp canceled his arrangements for the rooms at Pocono, remaining at the place chosen by Loyal. The day before his vacation ended, Catherine and Wellenkamp had strolled to a shady glen nearby. Stanley pulled from his vest pocket a small piece of brown cloth, and after fingering it caressingly, he handed it to Catherine, who exclaimed, quote, "The piece Loyal tore from my dress," unquote. Stanley smiled, and Loyal wakened from his long nap, but neither his master nor Catherine noticed him. Quote, "You will never know how much I hated you when this was all that I had of you, and I did not know your name," unquote. Then Stanley took the hand that held the bit of cloth and spoke of other things than hate. After a time, Loyal came and looked inquiringly into the two faces very near together, barked softly, and wagged a most approving tail. The muscular young man took it while apologizing for the dog's conduct. This concludes today's reading of the January 14th, 1909 Mountain Eagle. We at Kentucky Tennessee Living would like to thank you for your continued support as we bring to you the history of the Appalachian Mountains.